we're sitting here with Scuba San Diego himself, Mr. Rod Watkins. So we're getting the story here. So 1968
That's when I started teaching.
is when you started teaching. So when did Scuba San Diego actually become a company? Like when did you start working
Well,
here?
it was just a private party. I incorporated in 1983,
Okay.
and we've been running ever since and never stopped.
Okay.
You know, it was a lifelong goal. I went through several life experiences before landing in San Diego. But I taught as far north as Northern California, as far east as Puerto Rico, lately in the South Pacific, in the Republic of Palau occasionally. And it's been a great run. 51 years will be my anniversary, August 28th this year.
That's incredible.
Continuous
That's
teaching.
congratulations. So you're like you kind of are a huge centerpiece in like diving history of San Diego, from what I understand.
No, there's bigger people.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
No, I don't know.
Yeah,
not from what I hear, but
very there's people that are great photographers, world famous. Chuck Nicklin had San Diego Diver Supply over in Pacific Beach. He's like the grandfather of diving in San Diego, and actually he was on the filming of one of the Bond movies.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of really famous dive personalities who make their home here in San Diego and have been in San Diego for a long period of time. As far as teaching goes, I think I'm the oldest active teaching instructor in probably Southern California. I don't know of anyone with 51 years of continuous teaching experience. There's some people that haven't been instructors for that long, but they've started like Diving Unlimited International. They've started other companies and got out of teaching. But I love teaching, and I've always been a teacher. So that's why I do it.
That's right. What I meant was that when I got into diving, whether it was hull cleaning through Robert Beltran, where I was going to Ocean Enterprise to do
one
this,
of my students.
everywhere I went, there was somewhere that knew Rod Watkins, and I'd say, "Well, who'd you dive with?" "Oh, I work for Rod Watkins Scuba San Diego," and your name would continuously come up. So you've absolutely like hit, and they mentioned constantly, "What's the Sports Chalet?" and Rod used to, and then you taught me in college, and so you've hit a lot of the things. Which is impressive.
I taught for 10 years at San Diego State University, diving physics and physiology. I wasn't actually working with Mark Flahan, who is a pretty old instructor, and I think he's still active too. But I was in the ENS department and taught the physics and physiology, so it was a prerequisite for getting into science diving at his department over in biology. And it was a prerequisite, not a prerequisite, but an elective for police science, archaeology, anthropology. It was a good elective. It was 3-unit upper division class. It was interesting.
So let's talk about, is it true that you're the first person to charter a snorkel tour at the La Jolla Caves?
I'm the first one.
Or the Cove,
to start organized guided snorkeling tours and kayaking tours in the La Jolla Cove area. Of course, you can't take a kayak in the Cove, but I had the first organized kayak touring business. The people had been in kayak rental business for many, many years, but nobody actually started educating until I came on the scene, and then a bunch of other people jumped in after I got started,
right?
Because there was more money to be had. But I got out of it when the politics of the situation got ugly, and now all those people over there basically work for the city of San Diego as employees. They're paying them huge amounts of fees to do. I'm not sure what they do with the money, but they sure don't put it back into La Jolla Shores. But that's neither here nor there.
But you were kind of on the forefront of that fight to make it accessible for guys like you and me to make a living taking people out kayaking and stuff like that. And then, so do you think they'll ever get to a point with that about scuba diving and the snorkeling in La Jolla Coast?
Well, it has been there, but the scuba diving community is not as pecuniary as the kayaking community in La Jolla is. Mm-hmm. Nobody in that kayaking community could get together and agree on anything, so as a result, they pretty much all laid down and let the city run right over them. But when the city was talking about RFPs for diving organizations, we all the diving community, the PADI instructors, the NAUI instructors, the SSI, everybody who was teaching and guiding in San Diego united, and we called in some pretty sharp attorneys from PADI and NAUI, and that all went away.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that all went away for now. I'm sure that the two-headed snake that is city government will raise its ugly head again. Hopefully I'll be gone by then, because I'm tired of dealing with bureaucrats.
Okay, so that leads me to my next section of questions, which is, out of your whole span, you've seen a lot. What do you think is the hardest thing to get into for younger divers to overcome, starting new companies? What are they lacking? How can they help? What are some of the things?
This is a very interesting question. I've had many employees, not employees, but instructors that have guided dives for me, try and duplicate what I do. Mm-hmm. And there's a big graveyard of scuba guide services in
I can imagine.
First of all, you got to... I gave a talk at a NAUI instructor training course down in 32nd Street, and we had a panel, and they asked me to speak on the prospects for employment in the diving business. And my first comment was, well, you have to be prepared to be poor. I remember I had a master's student from SDSU, Gabe Garcia. He'd already written 2 papers for the and that were published in the American Medical Journal and a couple other journals on fetal alcohol addiction, and he was heading up the fetal alcohol lab at SDSU. And he took my basic class, and then he diving physics class, and he took my advanced class, and then he took my dive master class. And then one day he came. The dive master class wasn't part of the SDSU thing; it was just the basic and the advanced. Well, he took rescue, and he came to me one day and he says, "Rod, I want to do what you do." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I want to work for you." And I said, "Wait, you're a published scientist. You're going to be a professor. You're on your way to your PhD. You're finishing your master's." He says, "I can't kill mice anymore." I said, "Gabe, you're in line for the cushiest job in the world, being a college professor." And he said, "I can't do it." And so he worked for me for about 5 years, and then he went to Hawaii and got a job there with Maui Dreams, and then he got into logistics there. I believe he's still in Maui, and he's happier in Clam. And I asked him, I said, "Well, what is it about science that you hate?" He said, "First of all, I hate killing mice on a regular basis.
Sure. And
the second thing is I hate having graduate students that call me at 3 a.m. when they've got experiments they're supposed to monitor, and I have to go down to the lab and do their monitoring for them because they're too sick, or usually they're hungover." I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "No, I'm done with the whole science thing." So he's a happy camper. Last I knew, he was still in Maui. So I've seen a lot of people try and get in the business and ultimately fail. First of all, I got lucky because my daughter worked for Hewlett-Packard, and at like 18 years old, she was the youngest director of a division in the history of the company. She was head of web-page design and education. Back in the early 90s, she called me and said, "Dad, get a computer. I've got your website for you. It's perfect." And I said, "What's a website?" hey, you got to have a website, Dad. I go, oh, I don't even know how to use a computer. She says, get a computer and get some pictures and send them to me. I'll do it all for you. And so it took me a year and a half to get a computer because I had a girlfriend that had a computer, and I learned how to use Word from her. Finally got a computer, and she put my website up. She doubled my business that year.
Wow. From the
That was in the early 90s.
And that's right at a time where,
Yeah,
wow.
and I had Scuba San Diego Inc., and I tell people, I say, I'll never go out of business, unless I die, because nobody can beat that website. The URL is so strong.
And that is one thing.
And look, I didn't own a computer, and she bought the URL. She paid for the first 10 years.
Wow.
Before I even had a computer.
That's really incredible, and that's something that really does play heavy into
my
Google
success.
rankings and the SEO, search engine, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't compete with basically the
URL.
first 3 words that people are searching for when they're searching for it, which is
Scuba
San Diego. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Good
so
play.
I owe a lot to my youngest child, my daughter. She's a very bright girl. She graduated from high school at 14. Got into junior college. That wasn't a good experience, but she withstood that somehow with her mother and I helping. And then she got an internship with HP, and she kept growing with the company.
Okay, but the computers, and you were early on, but what else is, because you're consistent, you have a plan. I mean,
you got to be a business person.
Right, you're obviously.
Let's go back to the Now AA instructor training course.
Okay.
My talk was on how to stay in the diving business, and my first statement was, if you're going to stay in the diving business, you have to realize that you have to make money. You have to charge enough money to stay in business. Otherwise, you're gone. And if you're going against a powerful URL like mine in those days, even, you're not going to do it simply by cutting prices. You got to do something.
I like that.
You have to do something original. And then I have a lot of kids, like Gabe. When Gabe started working for me, he said, Rod, if I want to go to the tropics, how do I get a job in the tropics as a dive instructor? Because he was an NAUI instructor by that time. I said, Gabe, the most important thing in the tropics is not the dive instructor or the dive master. The most important thing in a remote place like Palau or Raja Ampat or someplace like that is, if you're an instructor, you must know how to repair equipment. So if you want to be of the 10,000 instructors that from all over the world that want to work in Raja Ampat or Palau, if you're the guy if you're one of 10 guys that know how to repair gear and have the certificates,
wow, great suggestion,
then you're going to get the job, because they don't need to keep their gear going. Sure, like in Palau, they have a Navy guy, and they have another guy that comes over from Guam, does their VIPs and their hydros and stuff. But it costs a fortune.
That's incredible.
If you were in sight with the dive operator, and you could do all of those things for them, take a regulator apart, clean it up, put it back together, and have it work, you got the job.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, and that's what Gabe did. He started going to, I showed him as one of my instructors when he applied for these regulator repair and workshops at the DEMA show and the Long Beach Scuba show, and went to school here at Scuba Pro right here in San Diego. Went to their repair tech school. So he got all his repair tech certificates, and the first place he sent a resume to in Hawaii hired him.
Wow, that's incredible.
I mean, everybody wants to be a dive master or an instructor in Hawaii.
Right.
Well, if they really need somebody and you have those skills, they're going to really take a hard look at you.
Sure. So,
especially if you've been doing it.
So specialist being,
Yeah.
So, and I also didn't touch on this yet in this conversation. You can't tell this off the video or the text, but Rod, despite him not looking a day over 50, how old are you, bro?
I'm really
Seriously.
old.
No, because it needs to be talked about. This is a really important part. It's like,
I'm
70
sure.
70 what?
I'm 74.
74 years old, but you're like the probably by far the most active 74-year-old I've ever met in my life. He's diving. But it's not just diving; it's beach entry diving.
Yeah,
and you're still touring, and it's up the La Jolla Cove, so it's not easy even for guys like me. I'm coming up there with the huffing and puffing. I can't. I'm fathoming. I'm like, how am I gonna do? How am I gonna do this at Rod's age? So, do you have any suggestions for longevity? Like little habits that you've done in your life that has helped this? Like, I know there's a lot there, but diet, loving diet.
I was a vegetarian starting in when was that? 1983. So I was a vegetarian until 8 years ago. I started in 1983. It's 2019 now. And I didn't start eating meat again until I met this phenomenal chef at Red House Pizza 4 blocks from my house.
That's right.
And but I don't eat the pizza so much. But we became fast friends, and her husband and daughter are like extra children to me. Yeah.
Right.
And Cindy asked me over for dinner, and she only cooks range-fed, organic, and they even get because her husband's a Kiwi, he gets range-fed lamb brought in because he loves his Kiwi lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And they just opened a beautiful pub here in the neighborhood called Kairoa. It's the nicest brew pub and restaurant in San Diego.
And that's in addition to the Red House.
Yeah, they own the Red House too. He has a partner at the pub though.
I have to get the spelling on that.
It's a huge 2-story brew pub. You sit out in the front. You haven't been there, have you?
No.
Oh yeah, you should go with me sometime.
So your diet, you're obviously super active. You're reading. I saw you got a ton of books.
Yeah, reading's always good. I don't have any TV. I have a DVD player and a screen.
Oh, and you don't do sugar, right?
And I don't do any sugar.
That's huge.
Sugar is the greatest revenge of the Middle East upon the Western world ever perpetrated, because if you do enough reading, you learn that sugar is the key agent in arterial sclerosis, because it offers a binding point for the cholesterol on your veins and arteries, or capillaries and arteries. So if you can eliminate sugar from your diet, you're going to live a long time, and you probably will never get cancer, because you can't have cancer if you don't have sugar present. It's almost a given.
Wow, incredible.
So sugar is a deadly poison, and it's a poison that kills you very insidiously. Year after year, very quietly, it's killing you. And I really have a problem with the diet. I had a dive master from Germany. Marina Schatt was her name. Beautiful girl. When I became associated with her and her brother had entered my advanced diving class, and they went up to dive master. Then she worked for me. She was on a student visa here, and she just volunteered to work dives with me, and so we were fast friends. Her mother and father, I know them. They came from Germany many times while she was here, her 9 years. And one day she came to me and she says, "Rod, I'm very sick." I said, "What's wrong with you? I noticed you were looking a little green around the edges lately." She says, "Well, I just saw my doctor, and he wants to take my gallbladder out." And I said, "Your gallbladder?" I mean, she's 26 years old. I said, that doesn't happen for 26-year-olds. And I said, "I would get a second opinion." And she says, "Well, I'm telling you this because I'm going to go home. My mom wants me to come home and see the family doctor in Germany." And so, that's cool. We'll get along. So she takes off for Germany, and when she gets to Germany, her family doctor says, "I don't think it's your gallbladder." After a thorough examination, her German doctor said, "I'm going to send you to an allergist." And he sent her to an allergist, and he did a full bank of allergy tests on her. And she came back for the results, and he said, "What have you been eating?" And she says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You have food allergies."
Hmm.
And she said, "Well, I've been living in America for the last 8 years." And the doctor said, point blank, what she told me, "That's it. You can't eat the food there." And he said that the food in America is full of chemicals and pesticides, especially the meat. You know how Germans love meat.
Correct.
And he says, "You can't eat that stuff there. You're going to get dead if you keep that up." And I've known that for most of my adult life. Vegetarian for 30 years, and she came home after that and went back to work, because after 2 months in Germany, she was cured. No gallbladder operation. She was going to buy some American doctors Mercedes for him. You know what I mean?
Chop out her body parts.
And so she's fine. But you know what? Her mother and father, she's very fortunate, are very wealthy. And they sent her a huge crate every 2 weeks
of real food,
actual fresh food from
That's
Germany.
Insane to think about.
And I didn't know, but she told me that in Europe they won't import American beef because of all the
hormones and
chemicals from the corn, because
steroids.
You're not supposed to feed a cow corn.
Correct.
It's supposed to eat grass, not corn, and it creates a protein-like toxin in the meat, which is really bad for your body. And people eat. It's the hamburger society. Look at the average American's obese.
I know. That's a whole nother slow conversation. But so check it out. Last question: if you could possibly, and you said it one time to me. I hope you'll talk about it again. But if you had to narrow down best dive in San Diego, at the Cove, or somewhere in the area.
Best dive in San Diego.
Most extraordinary dive. And you told me one time this story of something. I'm wondering if you'll touch back on it on your own.
The shark rescue?
No, you mentioned that you had come across a gray whale with, I think, a family member.
Yeah. This was in Zuma Beach.
Oh, so where's that at?
That's
Mexico?
northern. No, that's northern LA County.
Okay.
It's just north of Malibu. It's the next major beach north of Malibu. And this was my 6th dive, because in those days, we got certified through the LA County Department of Parks and Recreation underwater unit.
Cool.
A lot of those guys were ex-UDT guys and SEAL team guys. They founded that underwater unit at LA County, and it was the best training you could get for basic diving. And so I had done my 5 dives, and my brother and I were going to go do Zuma Beach, because that was a pretty easy dive if there's no surf. The surf gets really big there. But we got out there that day, and we were going to get pismo clams, because in those days you could get 10 or 20 pismo clams in about 15 minutes of diving. Of course, it weighed a lot. So that was funny, because we didn't have BCs then. We had these horse collars, and you had to blow them up. You take your regular air out and blow them up, and then take another breath and blow them up. And I'm diving down there, and I've got a nice bunch of clams, and I look up and I see this gray wall in front of me, a huge gray wall. And I'm going, holy crap, there's a submarine down here.
Oh my gosh.
And I start to look for my brother, and I don't see him anywhere, because he was collecting clams too. And we both surfaced. He surfaced just a few seconds before me for the same reason. But he said, "Rod, did you see that gray whale?" I go, "Well," I almost said, "Fred, there's a submarine down here."
Yes, yeah.
But it was a whale.
It finally clicked. He said whale. You're like,
yeah, and I go, yeah, and then the dang thing surfaced about 15 feet from me.
Incredible.
And it spyglasses for like 3 minutes, and you could see these big, like huge hubcaps, like a coffee saucer hubcap, barnacles on its nose and back, big, fully grown, old gray whale, and it just spyglasses. And I tell you, that was it for me. I never stopped diving after that.
Incredible.
And I've seen so many wonderful things here in San Diego and also other parts of the world. And so that was Zuma Beach, and that's a sandy bottom, and at that time it looked like a flower garden when you descended into 20 feet in the sand. And it wasn't really flowers, it was the necks of the bivalve pismo clams.
Wow.
that were so plentiful.
No more though.
Oh, they're gone.
Nothing like
completely.
that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Somebody, commercial operator, went through there one night with a drag line because they're only like 6 inches under the surface, and the drag line just dug them all out, and they're gone.
There's so many more things I want to talk to you about in an interview. Maybe we could do another one at some point later down the road. But
Sure.
what's future for Scuba San Diego? You just keep going. I mean,
Well, I just keep going.
I mean, you got to be exhausted. No,
I've trained a lot of lifeguards and up to dive master, because you can't get on a boat in San Diego City Lifeguard Service unless you're dive master certified. And I know a lot of the guards. A lot of them are retired, you know.
Uh-huh.
And every once in a while, I'll be at the Cove, and one of those guys will show up, like Dave Raines or John, and they'll say, "Rod, are you still diving?" And I laugh and I say, "Yeah." And they'll go, "When are you going to retire, man?" And I'll go, "You'll know I retired because you'll find my body out there in the kelp forest." And they just look at me like I'm crazy, but. Yeah, I'm not going to retire ever.
That's
currently
fantastic.
Developing offshore tours. I've got a tour to Palau coming up next January. 7 nights in paradise with the most unbelievable coral reef diving you can ever do. I've dove a lot of places with coral reefs, but these coral reefs are pretty pristine. And there's this abundance of sea life because the whole island nation of Palau is a ecological reserve. All the 3,000 some odd islands. No one can fish in
Really?
Palau but a Palauan.
Is that right?
That's God's truth. It's also the smallest nation population-wise with a seat on the UN.
Incredible.
And the people there, they all speak English. They're part of the Marshall Islands Confederation, even though they're an independent nation. So they are in close association with the United States, and the dollar is the unit of exchange. And
easy.
it's really a beautiful place to go.
So
And,
7 nights,
7 nights, 5 days,
5
of
days of diving.
2 tank diving.
$1,600 or $1,700 bucks.
$1,637, and
Killer deal.
private cabins for each couple.
That sounds awesome.
2
So we're
person.
gonna plug that on the. I'll put that in on the ad,
Oh,
of course. So I think that's a lot of great stuff right there, man.
Link